sky's not blue.
You need to understand that when the time comes, I'm going to be taking over.
Welcome back to the Cult House Podcast. I'm your host, the Scholar of Spite and the Saturday Night Delight, Roger Riddell. Joining me today, he is a musician who plays with Guest, Corrections House, Mirrors for Psychic Warfare, and is a former member of bands like Nachtmystium and Minsk, and is also a sound engineer who has worked with Darkthrone, Eyehategod, Atlas Moth, and many more. He is Sanford Parker. How are you doing today, Sanford?
Good.
It's kind of a long-winded intro.
It was a nice one.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things where I think sometimes it's easy to forget all the things that you've done, and then you just hear them listed out, and it's just like, oh yeah, that's a lot of shit.
Yeah. No, I forget about a lot of stuff until somebody brings it up.
Yeah, so I think the last time I saw you was probably like 2018 at the Ghetto Carts thing, and you and Ryan Oliver like shared a bottle of whiskey with me.
Oh yeah. Yep. Was that before or after we played in DC on that Atlas Moth tour?
I think that was after, because that was like July 2018, and
Yeah.
the Atlas Moth tour was January.
Right. You're right.
Yeah, no, so I just saw that you are doing a tour this summer with Steve Von Till from Neurosis. How did that come about?
So he wanted to, was wanting to do, I don't think he's actually ever done a full like solo tour. And he wanted to recreate his most latest record. And there's a lot of layers to it. There's a lot of synth stuff and it's kind of soundscapey bits and horns and strings and all sorts of stuff. So, he wanted to try and recreate that vibe the best he could. Obviously, doing it by himself would, be an issue. So he contacted me to see if I wanted to, do like some synth keyboard stuff. And he's got this guy, Dave French, that Tex for Neurosis, also amazing sound guy. I think he's playing drums in Yob now, actually. But rad dude, and he's gonna kind of do the same thing, like play synths and some additional stuff. And then Allison Chesley, that plays under Helen Money, she's going to be playing cello too.
Yeah, and this is like one of I guess like a few Neurosis side projects that you're involved in on some level, right?
Yeah, I guess this would make number 3, I think. Yeah, I don't know. I guess he just, like I've known Steve for a long time. I've helped him like a few years ago. He flew me out to his place in Idaho. He's got a studio out there, and I helped him kind of, get his footing with the software, recording software called Ableton. And he wanted to get more into like MIDI and sequencing and stuff like that. So he instead of trying to learn it himself, he just felt it would be better to fly me out and have me kind of help him go over some things. So we kind of bonded over, synthesis and, just kind of like experimental sounds when I was out there. And I guess he just thought that I would be the right guy for the job.
Yeah, and I finally, like a few years ago, right before the pandemic, I finally got to see like Neurosis itself.
Oh yeah,
like just years of nothing ever lining up, and it was worth the wait.
Yeah, they're an incredible band. I think the first time I saw them was in '95, and I mean, I was just like completely blown away. Like it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life. Still today, like one of the best shows I've ever seen. And I mean, every time I see them, they blow me away. So it's weird to like so many years later be so involved in some of the members, you know, side projects. There were Neurosis played a festival a couple years ago, and it was just like a one-off thing, and their crew were all out touring with other bands. So they asked me if I wanted to tech for them. So Steve flew me out to be his guitar tech for a festival, you know. So it's just like it's been pretty wild to like go from, you know, being a mega fan since the 90s up to like actually being involved with a lot of the stuff they do.
Yeah. And the other projects that you're involved in with Neurosis members are Corrections House and Mirrors for Psychic Warfare, both of which are with Scott Kelly, right?
Right. Yep. Yeah. So Corrections House is me, Scott, Mike Williams from Eyehategod, and Bruce Lamont from Yakuza. And Mirrors is just Scott and I. It's just the two of us.
Yeah. How did all of those come about? Because I've always really kind of wondered about Corrections House, because I know that you had some kind of similar projects before that with like Bruce with Circle of Animals and you know, just some things like that. So how did the I guess the four of you come together for Corrections House?
Well, Corrections House was a mistake. It was never supposed to happen. It was originally going to be Scott and Bruce were going to just do a solo tour, right? Just the two of them. Scott was going to do an acoustic set, and Bruce is going to do like, he does like looping vocal sax stuff, you know, just by himself. So originally it was just going to be the two of them. And then a few South by Southwest ago, there was a show, like Century Media did a showcase or something. And Mike would introduce the bands for each band, and Bruce was down there because Nachtmystium was playing, and Bruce was actually opening for us, doing a solo thing on the you know, the shows going down. And so they thought it would be funny if Bruce like backed him up as he was introducing bands and like just play like kind of ambient, like soundscapey type of shit. And it ended up being really cool. So then that somehow also became a thing. So then it became like Scott Kelly, Bruce Lamont, and Mike Williams were all gonna do like Scott. I think Mike was gonna do like a spoken word thing or something. So Bruce had mentioned this to me, and I was like, well, I've got to fucking get involved. So then it was going to be me doing an electronic set, Scott doing a set, Bruce doing a set, and Mike doing a spoken word thing. And we talked to this booking agent, and we're like, this is what we want to do. We want to do 4 solo sets. And he was like, you guys are idiots. You should just start a band. And we're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. So that's exactly what happened. We booked a tour before we had written one single note. We had like a full like 6-week American tour book.
Yeah, I mean, both of those Corrections House albums are fantastic too, because the first time that you listen to either of them, it's hard to predict what's going to happen on the next, because the vibe can kind of shift from song to song kind of dramatically. Yeah,
I mean, that was, you know, a lot of that was intentional. Some of it wasn't. A lot, again, like a lot of it was just experimenting, trying stuff. Like the way we wrote songs was very unconventional. The first full length, like during that tour, we stayed at Phil Anselmo's house. We had like several shows around New Orleans, so we ended up staying at his house for a week. So we would like go play a show, then go back to his house, and then we also had 2 days off during that time. So Phil has a studio on his property. He lives out in the middle of nowhere. And so we just recorded Scott playing riffs, like to a click track, just like, you know, fucking hours of riffs, right? And then when the tour was done, I took the riffs back home and I chopped them up and kind of created songs out of them. And that was like how a lot of the material for the first record was written. And then the second one was like kind of the opposite, where I created a bunch of loops and then Scott came up with guitar parts over them. So we kind of did it the opposite way the second time.
Yeah, and from that being like one super group to now you're playing bass in Guest, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so like that's like a whole other super group. So first of all, I asked this to Blake Harrison when I talked to him because he's also in a super group out here. And as a member of a super group, how much do you hate the term super group?
I fucking hate it. I hate it so much. There's really nothing super about it, I don't think, you know. I mean, I get it, you know, but I just hate that word because it's just like, you know, four knuckleheads just playing music or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's not, I don't know. I don't think there's anything super about it.
Yeah, because I mean it's you, Mike from Broken Hope and Atlas Moth, Andrew from Atlas Moth, and then Marcos from Stabbing Westward, right?
So yeah, it's D, the vocalist. He's in a band called Whipped, and they're kind of more of like a punk band. Yeah, then Mike and Andrew from Atlas Moth and Marcus from Stabbing Westward.
Yeah, how did that all come about?
That kind of came about. So Andrew and Marcus have known each other for a long time, and they've been talking about doing a project together for years, and it's just never worked out because Andrew was busy with Atlas Moth and Marcus was busy with Stabbing Westward, and Atlas Moth is kind of taking a break for a bit, and Marcus quit Stabbing Westward, so they kind of, and with the pandemic, they kind of took the opportunity to actually finally get together and start jamming out some songs. And they needed a vocalist, so they found D. D is like an old friend of Andrew. They grew up together, and obviously Mike, you know, was there to play drums, and so they came to me to record 4 songs for like an EP or demo or whatever. And they didn't have a bassist; it was all synth bass. So when we were done tracking, I just kind of mentioned, you know, like, hey, you guys should get a bass player, and if you're looking for one, I'll do it, you know. So they were like super stoked on it, and it worked out really well. Like I was hanging out with them at a bar, and then I left the bar, came back to my studio and recorded all my bass tracks, you know, and then like sent them a file, and they're like, this sounds awesome. So it just kind of went from there, and we just recorded 5 more songs. We're finishing, we got like vocals for a couple left, and then we're gonna compile those, and that'll be the full length.
Yeah, is this like the first time in, you know, a while that you've done anything other than synths in a band in like any official capacity?
Yeah, absolutely. The last time I played bass was in 2009 for a band, so it's been a minute.
Yeah, was that when you were in Minsk or?
Yeah, the last show I played was in Portugal, actually, with them.
Yeah. So what's it like in Guest just having, you know, like 5 people from fairly like kind of different musical backgrounds with their individual bands just kind of melding together like that? Because I haven't had a chance to hear any of Guest like music yet.
Yeah, we don't have anything out yet.
Yeah.
We're still in the process of doing it. But I would say like it is funny because we've all had our share of not so great experiences playing in bands, right? And I think we've all kind of reached the point where we're just like super frustrated with everything. But we're all like, we all kind of share that same like frustration. So with this band, like we get along so well. There's like no bullshit. Everybody's super cool. Everybody has the thing that they're really good at, and they do it, you know, and shit gets done. And it's been like the easiest band I've ever been in so far. It's been kind of wild. We keep saying like this is the band we've always wanted, you know, but it took us, you know, 30 years of playing music to actually get there. But yeah, it's been super rad, man. These guys are awesome. I love playing with them.
And about how far along is the album right now?
We tracked vocals for a song last night. We're gonna do hopefully 2 more tomorrow night, and then maybe by the weekend finish the rest. So I'm hoping, like, that's all we have left, and other than mixing. So I'm hoping by like the end of the week we'll have everything tracked, and then I can start mixing it. So definitely by the end of the month that'll be done for sure.
Yeah. And having your own studio now, does that take like some of the stress out of recording an album, or does it put more stress on it because you got other shit that you got to do too?
Well, I mean, the reason I like, so, I own studios, for like 20 years. And a few years ago, I just kind of got burnt out on having a studio. So I sold mine and just kept like the gear I needed to mix. And then I would just kind of fly around and record wherever. And then, come back to I had a mixing setup in my basement. But it got to a point where I really needed a room just for like tracking guitar and vocals, and stuff like that. Like the studio I have now is just it's a small control room and a small tracking room, and that's it. I couldn't do a full band in here. Like it's like one person at a time recording, So I still go to other studios to track basics, drums, and then I can come back to my place and do guitar and vocals and mix it. So I purposely kept it small so I can keep my overhead low and I don't have to like stress about it every month,
Yeah. A few episodes ago, I was talking to Heath Rave about his project that he's got now.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things that came up was that the first few tracks of Lotus Thrones that I had listened to, that he had sent to me, a few seconds in, I was just kind of like, did Sanford work on this? Because it's like, I think I've listened to so many albums that you've produced now that I can kind of like, I can't explain what exactly it is, but I can kind of get a sense that, oh, maybe Sanford like worked on this. Kind of like I can hear like Rick Rubin albums sometimes be like, yeah, this is a Rick Rubin album if I don't know that it's him.
I mean, even though it's not like always intentional, I don't try to like put a stamp on anything. To me, like my philosophy with production is you shouldn't really hear the production. You should hear the songs, you should hear the band. I feel like if you start to hear the production, then it's getting in the way and you're not really doing the band justice, So I always try to like, do the best product that I can without like, this is my sound, this is what I'm going for. But I know like it's going to come through no matter what, because I have a certain way of doing things. Rick Rubin has a certain way of doing things. Like every producer has a way of operating. So whether it's intentional or not, I feel like it's going to seep into the albums, and you're going to start to notice like certain things that keep reoccurring, in their productions.
Yeah, because like I'm not like technically savvy enough to explain it specifically, but it is like you can always kind of hear that certain things are at like a certain place in the mix, or sometimes if there's like synths on something, I can kind of tell that it's synths that you were involved with.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
So how's everything else been going? Like how did the pandemic work out? Did having your own studio kind of make getting through that easier?
Yeah, 100%. Like I finished, so I decided to build the control room first so I could move my gear in and start mixing while I started building out the tracking room. So we finished the control room the week everything went into lockdown. Like I was like ready to move in, and then all of a sudden it was like fucking everything went to shit. So I stayed in my house, mixing out of my basement for like the next like week or so. But then I'm like, this is stupid, because I'm either gonna sit in my basement by myself, or I'm gonna sit in my new studio that I just spent like thousands of dollars building by myself. You know what I mean? So it didn't really matter. So I loaded all my stuff up, moved it in, and it was great because they gave me a place to go every day, and that was huge. Just getting up and getting out of the house and like going, even though I just drove across town and like sat in another room, it was still like better than just being stuck in the house for like months,
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely helped a lot, like mentally for sure. And then I still like, obviously all of my tracking shit canceled that I had booked for that summer. But I had already recorded so much stuff before the pandemic hit that I never really had like a lull. There was a like a month where I wasn't like crazy busy, but I pretty much worked through like the entire thing. And then by the time like the fall hit, I was already back doing records again. So I really didn't have much downtime.
Yeah. Out of all of the studios that you've worked in, do you have any that are kind of like standouts as, just favorites based on either the vibe or just like the selection of equipment or anything like that?
I mean, Steve Albini's Studio Electrical Audio is to me like the footprint that every studio should go by. It's like there is clean, like the staff is amazing, they're friendly as fuck. Everything works, and if it doesn't work, it's sitting in a tech room. It's not sitting in a rack or in a mic locker. If it's broken, you don't see it. It's being fixed, and that's amazing. Like I wish every studio owner would book a session at Electrical just to see how a studio should be ran. So I mean, definitely in Chicago, that's my favorite for sure. There's a studio in upstate New York I like a lot called Applehead, and it's like on a farm out in the middle of nowhere, and it's cool. It's like the studio's in like a barn, like a timber frame barn, and the staff there is amazing. I love doing records there. There's like some studios in LA, like there's one called Big Bad Sound in LA I like to work out of a lot. So I mean, yeah, there's definitely a few, but Electrical is probably my go-to, especially in Chicago. If I could do every record at Electrical, I would.
Yeah. And you mentioned Phil Anselmo's studio, and I've seen that listed before in like down albums as Node Ferratu's Lair. Do you have like a name for your studio?
I just started calling it Hypercube because when I closed my studio and started mixing out of my house, the first record I mixed was the Voivod record, and when we were done and they were doing album credits, they were like, "Hey, what do we credit your studio as?" And I'm like, "Oh shit, that's a good question." And the first thing that popped in my head was the Voivod song "Into My Hypercube." So I was just like, Hypercube, and they're like, haha, that's great, cool. And they just kind of stuck.
Yeah. And some of the albums that you're best known for having worked on are the Nachtmystium black metal albums, Addicts and Assassins. Being that it's like almost 15 years now, I think, since Assassins.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, because I think like maybe a year or two ago was like 15 years since Instinct Decay, and I know like Addicts was it's like 12 now.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you have any like standout memories from that? As much of a train wreck as that band was at times, is there anything that stands out as like bright spots?
I mean, I had a lot of fun making those records, even though it was like complete chaos all the time. It was still a lot of fun. And even Blake back then wasn't the train wreck he ended up becoming. So he was actually pretty enjoyable to be around most of the time. But yeah, I mean, like working with Will and Whitehead, that was rad. Yeah, I don't know. That was a fun period, like it was the Nachtmystium records. We did the Twilight records around that time. I did a Leviathan record shortly after that, and like all those were super fun to work on. Even though like everyone was a complete logistical nightmare to deal with, it was at the end of the day, I still kind of walked away with a smile on my face.
Yeah, I mean, I still listen to all those records all the time. The third Twilight record I put on in the gym, maybe about a month ago. And it's like I forgot how good this was.
Yeah, I haven't heard any of those in a long time. I should go back and check them out.
But yeah, you had mentioned Blake and like how he wasn't, as much of a train wreck to deal with back then. And like I remember when I first moved to Chicago in around like 2010, 2011, one of the first shows that I got around to going to out there was when you all were opening for Cradle of Filth.
Oh,
And he was like one of the first people that I met in the metal scene. He was just like really nice to me. And
yeah.
I've always it's really regrettable just like the path that he ended up going down, you know?
Yeah, it sucks, man. I mean, he had a lot of potential. You know, he really had like everything just kind of laid out, like ready to go. And he's a smart dude. You know, he's not an idiot. And he had that record label that he was, you know, he was living off of it. You know, the label was generating enough money at the time to where that was what he was doing full time. He was doing the label, you know, writing music, writing songs. He had a knack for like, you know, wheeling and dealing, like and yeah, he just kind of like let it all go to shit, which is really too bad because there was a lot of potential at that point.
Yeah. I mean, Silencing Machine, I think, was probably like the high point. And there's like parts of that album where the title track, especially, the breakdown, like part of the way through there, always just kind of like that still gets stuck in my head because it's like the best parts of like the way that Satyricon sounds,
Yeah,
but not like aping them totally, you know?
yeah. That that's my personal favorite. That was the one I was most involved with on the writing side of things. So I really like that one, you know, as far as like my contribution anyway. And I thought the songs were good, you know. I liked the songs, and I thought it was a good record. It just kind of too bad, like shortly after that, everything just kind of fell apart.
Yeah. So what are you working on right now on like the sound engineer side of things that you're excited about?
I'm actually working on the new Yakuza record like right now as we're talking. So I'm mixing that. It's Bruce is actually coming in tonight. There was like one saxophone part that we still need to do. So he's gonna lay that down, and then yeah, then it's just mixing. So I should have that thing wrapped up pretty soon.
Yeah, you'll have to give that boy a pat on the butt for me.
I will.
Yeah, no, it's I was talking to Jerome about Yakuza, I guess like last fall, because I had him on here around then, and it's pretty cool that he's part of the band now too.
Yeah, no, that's rad. Like they're the four of those guys are crushing it right now. Like I think these new songs is their best material, and Jerome's a badass. You know, he's a phenomenal musician. Yeah, it's all this stuff's great.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I've always loved about Chicago's music scene in general is that everyone up there just seems like they're pretty versatile. Like they're not just kind of pigeonholed into one specific like genre or subgenre, really.
Yeah, there's always been kind of like a level of experimentation in the music scene that I think people aren't afraid to kind of dive into deeper and you know, add more elements like that to it. You know, it's definitely not like play by the book you know, music. It's always seems to be fairly experimental and like gender or genre bending type of stuff, you know.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of that is or could be credited to just kind of like that spirit of Wax Tracks from like the late 80s, early 90s?
Probably. I mean, I would credit them and like labels like Thrill Jockey, you know, putting out stuff from Tortoise, bands like that. You know, I feel like, you know, the music scene has always kind of had this, even like going back to jazz and some of the, you know, even older styles of music, I felt like it's always had kind of like an experimental kind of underlying part of it, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like conveniently in the middle of the country. So all of these influences just kind of like melt together there, like right in the center, you know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, as far as being in a band, like it's a great location, obviously, because you can drive to New York, or you can drive out west. It'll take you a couple of days, but it's not terrible. You can shoot down to Texas in a day. It's all easy to kind of get to.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of like centralized location, if you have to like fly anywhere too, it kind of makes things a little bit more reasonable.
Totally, 100%. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do records and on the East Coast and on the West Coast all the time, and it makes getting around a lot easier for sure. When I was in LA for a little bit, that was kind of crazy, because like even just flying to Europe, you add like 4 hours to your flight, like instantly.
Yeah.
So it was always a little harder getting around, but yeah, Chicago's great for that.
Yeah. Have you gotten out to any good shows since everything started opening up again?
A little bit, yeah. Mostly just kind of like local stuff. At like more of the touring shows are just now starting to come around, and yeah, there's a few shows coming up that I'm excited about. I want to see that Ministry show that with Melvins and COC. That should be pretty fun.
Yeah, I think that's coming near here, but it's like sold out already. 'Cause I was gonna try to hit that up in Baltimore. But I just saw the Decibel tour with like Obituary and Municipal Waste and fuck, I'm blanking now. That was a good show.
Day Creeper was on that, right?
Yeah.
They it was in Joliet here. So I couldn't. I was in the studio, and if it was in the city, I would have definitely gone. But driving an hour on top of like working all day was just not gonna happen.
Yeah. I got to back in November catch Mastodon and Opeth, and that was really fucking good.
Oh, right on. That's cool.
Yeah. I've loved seeing how Mastodon's like show has evolved over the years, because I think I saw them for the first time when they did Leviathan, and that's when they still just had like a backdrop, and now they've got all the video screens and everything.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember last time I think the last time I saw them was at the Metro. They did like a one-off, like small venue show, so they didn't have like all the production stuff with them, but I'm sure now it's pretty fucking out of control.
Yeah. Speaking of small venue shows at the Metro, did you get to check out the Metallica show back in October?
No, I was dealing with some personal stuff and I wasn't able to go, unfortunately, but I heard it was fucking rad.
Yeah, I'm fucking jealous of everyone that I saw posting pictures from that.
Yeah, I was my buddy's the talent buyer, and he said that was just like an absolute nightmare trying to get them and their crew and everything set up in that small space. He said it was nuts. Like they had like the guitar techs were in I think the lobby was all just taken over by the monitor world and like their guitar techs, and then they had like techs in the merch area, they had techs like in the balcony or something. It was just like they had to kind of spread everybody out all around, and so the monitor guy I think had to have like some sort of telecom system so he could see the band playing on a monitor and like all this crazy ass shit.
Yeah, I mean that's I never thought about that before, but that's got to be just a pain in the ass for a band that's used to playing huge venues to go down to something that size too.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like that's a lot of people are like, why can't they just use the monitors? I'm like, they haven't used monitors in 30 years, man. They're not gonna like start using them for one show. It's like it's cool that they do it, and but they still need their shit. They need what they're used to, so they can't just like jump on a completely different system and expect it to work.
Yeah. I mean, I got to see that 9 Inch Nails tour back in 2018 when they did the smaller like theater size venues.
Oh yeah.
That was a really interesting show just from a standpoint of like having seen them a few years earlier in like the big arena out here. seeing how they went about just like downsizing, all the lasers and everything.
Yeah. I was bummed I missed that. I think I was on tour working or somewhere or something. I forget why I didn't go, but yeah, that looked pretty sick too.
Yeah, I mean they dusted off some stuff that they rarely ever play for a couple of those nights. It was
Yeah.
the first tour where they did Perfect Drug live.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I saw something where they played the Broken EP like from beginning to end. Like they came out like that was like the first half of the set was just like that album, which I thought was pretty dope.
Yeah, I mean this year's the 30th anniversary of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just the other day I was listening to that, and I think I've like come around to the idea that Last is probably their best song instead of Terrible Lie, because for years I preferred Terrible Lie over like every one of their other songs.
Yeah.
It was a hard choice because they got like a fucking huge catalog, but
Yeah,
like,
they've got a lot of good shit.
yeah, but Terrible Lie, everything on Pretty Hate Machine really is kind of like, it doesn't hit me the same way on the album as it does on live versions,
Right. Yeah, the production on that record is a little weird.
Yeah.
I've always thought it was just kind of, there's something about it that it just feels like off to me, and I felt like by the time they got to the Broken EP, they had kind of dialed it in, and they figured out what they were going for. But I'm not a big fan of remixes, but I feel like that would be one record I would like to hear if they were to take those tracks now, like what it would sound like.
Yeah, because Pretty Hate Machine is like mechanical on a level that it's like, it's kind of like the sound equivalent of the Uncanny Valley, where you see like something that's computer animated that's realistic to the point that it's uncomfortable.
Right.
And that's
Exactly.
like, it sounds like it's a computer that sounds too human.
Yeah. Totally. I
Yeah.
get that.
Yeah. What are some of the things that, when you're producing an album that you look for, that you like try to stray away from when it comes to stuff like that, where it's just like, if you hear that something sounds a certain way, you're just like, oh, I fucked up, I need to go back and fix that?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I guess it's weird. I can't think of like any like specific like one thing, but I definitely tried, to approach every album a little differently, and I don't like repeating myself a lot. I don't like kind of getting pigeonholed into one production technique and then just kind of, oh, this is my thing, this is what I do, and just repeat it. So I'm always kind of experimenting and trying other things. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, I can't think of like one specific example, but yeah, I definitely, I don't know, I'm always kind of pushing myself and trying to, think outside the box and experiment and trying different shit.
Yeah. I mean, I can kind of see that just like between the two Leviathan albums that you worked on, because True Trader and Scar-Sided both sound, sonically like Leviathan, but there's like little differences in the way that they're like mixed and produced, and where things are at.
Well, Scar-Sided I didn't do. That was
Oh.
Billy Anderson, I think.
Oh, okay. I don't know why for some reason I thought you did Scar-Sided.
Yeah, no, the only Leviathan one I did was True Trader.
Oh, okay.
And that was that record was a really hard one to make, just because of the state that Whitehead was in. He was going through all the personal shit with his trial and all that stuff, and so he was in a pretty bad spot. So that one was difficult to do. That was probably the hardest record I've ever had to make. So to me, like that one is hard for me to listen to, just because there's a lot of like kind of dark energy to it, you know what I mean, that I associate with that record. But so, and I don't know if it technically sounds good or not. I don't think it really does, because just the way that we had to go about making it was kind of fucked up. But
Yeah. I mean, even the artwork on that album is kind of like, this is a book you probably shouldn't open.
Yeah.
It's like, you find the Necronomicon in the basement of the cabin, and you're like, oh, this is, bound
Yeah.
in flesh, and there's a face on the front of it.
I probably shouldn't fuck with this. Yeah, that's definitely one of those. I don't know. That was definitely a strange album to mix for sure, or to work on.
Yeah. What would you say is probably like, if you had to choose like 3 or 4 of them, what would you say are probably like, in your mind, the definitive like albums that you've worked on?
One of my favorite records that I've ever done, and I feel like it's highly underrated and nobody really talks about. I mean, I wish the band was more active than they are, but that band Wake, they put out album called Voices of Omens, and that album is one of my absolute favorite albums that I've ever worked on. Like that's one of the few records that I go back to and like listen to it as a fan. Not like, and I don't like critique my work on it. It's just that good of a record that I just go back and I listen to it and I enjoy it.
Yeah.
The band Unearthly Trance, I did a couple records with them that it's kind of the same way. They were just such like an easy band to work with, and such like rad dudes that, again, I can go back and listen to those records and just enjoy them for the music, and the band. So I don't know, like that's definitely like 2 highlights for me for sure, like personally.
Yeah. I think that's all the questions that I had off the top of my head. Is there anything else that you want to throw out there?
No, I don't. Not too much I can think about. Unless just keep an eye out for guest stuff. We got a bunch of shows coming up this summer, and we got the full length that we're wrapping up. I don't know when the fuck that's gonna come out. We still have to figure all that stuff out, so it might be a while, but we'll probably post some songs up on Bandcamp or something soon, just to start getting some stuff out there. But yeah, we're just we're gonna hit that pretty hard, so there's gonna be a lot of stuff coming out this year. We already got like several things lined up, some even like other stuff releases that we're gonna do, like EPs and stuff, we're gonna tackle later in the year.
Yeah, I should be back up there, I think, in time to hit some of those shows too. So
cool.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, thanks again, Sanford.
Yeah, man, it'd be good to see you.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you soon.